Hey, if you're trying to center your life on what God's calling you to do, in and out of season, no matter where you are, you just be faithful, put your head down, be faithful to what's in front of you. If that's pruning your environment, great. But if not, man, I know that God can still break through in the hardest of hearts and in the deepest of grounds.
Even when it feels like my world is shaking, I've had all that I can take. I know you never let me go. Whoa. And even when the waters won't stop rising, even when I'm caught in the dead of night, I know no matter how it ends, you're with me even there.
Hey, I'm Keith Stevens, spending time with Micah Tyler. He shares about the struggles of his early career and about his brother's recent passing and how he has found peace from God during that time. Micah also talks about some of his favorite memories so far this year and about his new song, God Did It.
I love that song.
I love that song.
I love that song.
Hey, it's Keith Stevens with I Love That Song, here today with my man Micah Tyler. Welcome, Micah.
Hey, pumped to be here, man.
Glad to have you here,
Thanks
man.
for having me.
Hey, we just said earlier, it's not my first rodeo, but being from Texas, did you go to rodeos, man?
You know what?
Did
I
you?
never threw the Wranglers on. Now, it's a big deal where I live in Butte, Texas. One of
Yes.
the few events that
It
we
is.
have. But no, we were more playing sports than
Yeah.
hopping on the animals and running around out there. So I kept my Wranglers in the closet.
Gotcha. All right, man. All right. Well, we're here to talk about some of your songs today in your life and
Let's
your
go.
story. And one of the ones that we always get lots of calls about is Never Been a Moment.
Yeah.
Can you share about that one?
Yeah. So for me, when I'm writing music, I've got two rules that I'm trying to abide by. Rule number one is I want every single line to abide by Scripture. I want it to line up completely, because I wouldn't give anything to your family that I wouldn't give to mine. I want to make sure that we are just really staying diligent about lining up with what God's Word has already said. And the other thing is we want to make sure that these songs serve as time capsules. Like I really want them to be a picture of where I was when I wrote the song. So Never Been a Moment was one that I knew where I can't tell you what I had for breakfast that day. I can't tell you what shoes I was wearing, but I could tell you what my heart was doing that day. I felt called to step into youth ministry when I was in high school. So at 18 years old, right out of high school, became a youth pastor for 9 years. Somewhere in the mix of that, I went and bought a guitar, thinking that one of the kids in the youth group may learn to lead a few songs for me, so I didn't have to preach as long. They didn't. So I was like, I got to make sure to not waste my pizza budget on this. So I learned a few songs on the guitar, started leading worship for them, had other youth pastor buddies call me up to lead worship here and there, which turned into, when I was 27, feeling like God was calling my wife and I and our two kids to step out and trust Him to be faithful. We sold over half of what we owned. We bought a single-wide mobile home trailer. We put it on some borrowed land. I was doing odd jobs as a substitute teacher. I drove a sausage delivery truck. I had all these different jobs and stuff.
Did you bring your guitar when you were doing the sausage delivery
Oh, it
truck?
didn't fit in the truck. It was just me and the cardboard that day.
Yeah, okay.
So I was out there just running around and just trying to make ends meet for my family, but also be faithful to this calling. I did music independently for about 5 years, and I cannot tell you how many nights I spent driving deep into the night to go play at a youth event or to go play at some random church I'd never been to before, or try to get back from a youth camp and wash my clothes so I can go to the next one, just going, God, what are we doing right now? Or times in the truck where I'm going like, what is happening right now? So fast forward through a couple of crazy situations, I found myself sitting in a record label meeting. I got my very first record deal, and the next day I was going to write my first song as a signed artist.
Yeah.
And I walked in with a guy named Jeff Pardo, who's become a dear friend of mine, who I co-wrote Never Been a Moment with, and we started talking, and he said, hey, I got this idea for a song. And he just pulled out this piano, and he just said, there's never been a moment I was not held inside your arms. I said, oh, I like that. I said, there's never been a day when you are not who you say you are. And then we go back and forth, and it ends with, and so that song took 2.5 hours to write, which is very fast for me. I typically like to really vet them and really look over them, but it came out so quickly. But what I realized was that song was not written in 2.5 hours. That song took 33 years. That song took me sitting there in the times where it didn't make sense, the times where I got to celebrate the Lord, times where I felt like, God, where are you? But every single time I could look back in a moment where I felt like I was sacrificing something, I could always look back and see God's faithfulness over and over and over again in my life. And so that song just kind of flew out that day, but really God had been teaching that song to me for a long time leading up to that ring.
What I love about your story is that you say that while you were doing these odd jobs, you were always running back to play your guitar, running back to get to a youth group to share, to sing a song. And it says something about your passion. It says that when you're passionate about something, when God's given you a gift that you can do, a talent, a skill that's really from heaven above,
Yeah.
that it sort of is something that people can watch and enjoy and really celebrate because it's God-given.
Yeah.
And so when you have something like that, isn't it true that you really can soar when you step into that?
Well,
And it wasn't work at all.
No. And some days it was. Some days
Yeah.
it felt the work. But at the same time, I had someone speaking to my life one time and just say, God, you'll never stand before Jesus and him say, well done, thy good and successful musician. Like, our highest calling is not success. Our calling is faithfulness. And there's a certain weight that gets taken off of us whenever we're not trying to put a gold plaque on the wall, or we're not trying to get our name on a chart, or put our name in lights, or get on the biggest stage. It's like, God, I can only be faithful to what you put in front of me. My wife and I have been married for 20 years now. Just because I said I do 20 years ago does not make me faithful today. So I can't rely on my faithfulness from 20 years ago. And I can't say, God, if you'll just give me a crowd of 10,000 people, I'll be so faithful to that, and overlook the opportunity that today I get to be faithful by sitting with you. I'm going to fly home today and I get to be faithful to my family. I get to do the homework with the kids. I get to hang out with them and take them to the ball game and do those kind of things. And so just every day looks a little different for me. So in 3 days, I'll be back on a bus being faithful to the calling that God's given me. I'll be standing on a stage for 15 minutes proclaiming the word of God and trying to be faithful to the guys that I have on the bus. So at the end of the day, it's when we shift our eyes away from success into faithfulness that God really does fulfill those things, because God's calling in our life could involve some success, but at the end of the day, our highest calling is faithfulness.
Right. So for somebody listening who says, gee, I want to grow in my faithfulness to God,
Yeah.
A, what can they do? And the second thing is, when we are faithful and we're faithful where we're at, I find that God challenges us to change our environment.
Sure.
So more than being the worker at a desk, or maybe a musician, or maybe somebody who's a pizza delivery guy,
Right.
their ultimate job is to change their environment
That's
and
true,
to
too.
change the people around them. That's what
Yeah.
we're really called to do. How can somebody do that in a stronger way if they say, wow, that really resonates with me and I want to grow in that area of my life?
I look at it this way. If you look at the story of the sower and the seed, okay, and they're throwing this seed everywhere, right? For the longest time, I just kept thinking about the good soil. Like, okay, the good soil is the only place that deserves the seed. So for the longest time, the seed is the gospel. And we've heard the story before. He's throwing the seed out and it goes into the briar patch. And then when it tries to come up, it strangles it before it gets there. It falls into the rocky ground. It doesn't really be able to take root very deep, and the sun scorches it. It goes to the hard ground where it never really is able to get through, and the birds come and peck it up. And then finally, it finds the good soil. And for a long time, I just kept thinking, okay, it has to be the perfect soil. But I forget about this farmer. I forget about the guy. He looked crazy. This joker is throwing seed everywhere. He's throwing it into the city streets, on the sidewalks, on the rocky ground, because at the end of the day, I think he just wanted to see something grow. So sometimes if there's an opportunity to change your environment, if there's a way for you to walk away from decisions that you're making, do that thing. But I also firmly believe, I've met people in my life, and I am a soil that has not always been good, but somehow the gospel's made its way into my chest in the rocky times, in the times where the thorns are there, in where my heart is hard. God found me as a hard-hearted person. I was 9 years old, but at the same time, it was still like he found me and was able to reach into my life then. So I feel like if you're struggling and feeling like, what is your calling? What are you doing? Number one, you can only be faithful to today. So assess what today looks like. Today might be driving the pizza delivery truck because you got to pay the bills, so that you can work on the novel when you get home. You can write things out. Maybe for you, you are taking the kids to soccer practice so that you're going to have that time later that night to be able to really get on there and fill out the job applications or whatever that may be. So I think that trying to be faithful to today, but also don't think that if your environment isn't perfect, that there's not opportunity today for God to do something still miraculous. Because anytime that a dead heart comes to life, that is a miracle. So I always go back to that story and go, man, if God can, if there's a sower out there throwing these seeds out there saying that, and that's why I love Christian radio so much. You guys don't pick the cars it goes in. You don't pick the hospital rooms that deserve the seed. Everybody gets the gospel. So for me, it's like, hey, if you're trying to center your life on what God's calling you to do, in and out of season, no matter where you are, you just be faithful, put your head down, be faithful to what's in front of you. If that's pruning your environment, great. But if not, man, I know that God can still break through in the hardest of hearts and in the deepest of grounds.
Even in the rocky ground.
Even the rocky ground.
Even the tough soil, man.
Yeah, man.
Even the dry and weary land.
That's it.
It's true. There have been times in my life where I've been in a dry and weary land, and I've been in the rocky soil time. And I always think I've got to hold on to God tighter. I've got to hold on even more. But really, that's bad theology. Really, it's that He's holding on to me.
That's right.
He's holding on to me so strong that I don't have to.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I'm falling into that where I just need Him to hold me.
Yeah, over and over again, I'll go like, God, you're calling me to sacrifice a whole lot here, and we've got to really do this, that, and the other. There's never been a moment that I have not looked back on those times where I thought that I was giving so much that I look back and go, oh no, you were holding me the whole time.
Amen.
No, God, you were there the whole time.
So
you were
true.
faithful the whole time. So it's not, our sacrifice is a calling to display God's faithfulness, just like our weakness is an opportunity to show His strength.
Amen, brother. All the way. His strength is perfect.
It's made perfect.
We're talking with Micah Tyler here on I Love That Song. Micah, what's one of your favorite days that's happened since the beginning of 2025?
Okay, so rare time. For the 6th time in my entire life, we had a snow day in Buna, Texas. We had like 5 inches of snow, which for us is like shut the world down, make sure you got bread and milk.
Yeah.
But my oldest son, Noah, who is a freshman at Liberty University, he came home, and so he was home, just happened to be there for something else. But for the first time in a while, the 5 of us got to just enjoy each other. Like we literally, we made the snowmen. We threw the snowball fight. My niece and nephew came over, and they got to just run around and have these adventures in a landscape they'd never seen. We got to take all the pictures. We took the dog out, got to see how the dog reacted, all the things, and then we ended the whole night by watching a movie, getting some pizza, and just getting to just spend time with each other, which was just wonderful. So that's a day that I'll be holding on to. I'm on the road right now, doing a touring right now, and so on those times away, somehow the snow's going to warm my heart. I just know it will.
Absolutely. And then it all melted the next day, probably. In Texas,
it was quick.
Yeah.
Those snowmen did not last very long at
was
all.
On
So
and
yeah.
on. There is something magical about it. There's something very fun about
Yeah.
it. My wife always loved a good snowstorm because she'd say everything just shuts down for a while,
right.
and you can kind of hunker down.
Yeah.
What was childhood like for you growing up? What's a memory that you have that you really cherish?
Yeah, so I was raised in an interesting home. So my dad's Catholic, my mom's Baptist. So I was a Bathlete until I was about 10. I was going to CCD training on Wednesday nights, catechism, and then I was going to Sunday school on Sunday, which at times could kind of be confusing sometimes because you're hearing kind of different. But at the end of the day, what I learned is from a young age how much my parents love Jesus, and their marriage, been married for 45 years now, and it's centered on Jesus, and I just know that that's where it comes from. And my dad and mom, they come to like it's amazing. But for me, like a childhood memory, we did take those long road trips. And looking back, like in the moment, you're going, oh my gosh, we're driving to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. It's 15 hours. My Game Boy ran out of batteries. I've already listened to the same tape on my Walkman 5 times. I'm really showing my age right now. But I look back on when the game stopped with my brother and I sitting in the back seat and just cutting up and just enjoying each other. My brother actually passed away about a month ago. And so I really have been very nostalgic lately, just really looking back and thinking about those times. But as annoying as it was in the moment, those are the times I look back and just remember us laughing together in the car, listening to music together and singing in the car and that kind of thing. So those family vacations are one that I'll always go back to. And my parents my dad coached me in baseball. My mom was the PTA on the PTA and all that kind of stuff. So they were very involved in lots of ways. But those times hunkered inside of a Toyota Corolla driving 15 hours, really, they could be a steel cage death match, or they could be a time for you to really hit the crock pot and hang out together and have some really marinated memories together. And I think that God did a good thing with that.
With your brother Daniel, you were close with him.
Yeah.
Do you feel you've had time to grieve the loss or to marinate or to process it all with the busy lifestyle which you have and the writing and the touring that you have? You're obligated to still tour and do your concerts. I mean, how are you managing that? Do you compartmentalize it? What goes on and how do you deal?
Yes to all of it.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had time. No, I haven't had time. Yes, I feel like I compartmentalize. No, I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm wide open. But I think that's how grief works. My pastor said this in a sermon about 5 years ago. He's talking about in the beginning when God started creating things, and He created man and woman, and He created life. He didn't create death. He created us to live forever and enjoy this time with the Lord. And then when sin came, it just fractured everything. Like everything changed. And He said, the reason why death is so hard for us is that we were never built for death. We were built for life. So we enjoy life. When death happens, it feels I know it's a natural thing. I know that it runs in 100% of our families. but there's something about it that just doesn't. We're not able just to like, okay, let's just keep moving on here. So I'm trying to be present in the grief, trying not to get bogged down by what happened a month ago, but instead go, okay, God, when we're experiencing all these firsts. You know, he passed away on December 23rd, so it was our first Christmas without him was immediate. So looking across there, and like my wife and kids did a very kind thing. We were meeting with the funeral home to plan his funeral, and they went and took all of his presents from under the tree and went and took. So my mom didn't have to go through them. So there's all these things that when I think about them, they still tear me up. They're still awful things. But I also know that he loved Jesus and Jesus loved Daniel. And so the hope of heaven is the reason. I don't know how people go through this without that hope.
Yes.
Without the closeness of a friend like Jesus, without the hope of heaven, without the promise of his nearness in these times where my heart feels broken. And so, yeah, do I feel like it's been enough time? Man, I'd love to be able to have another couple months just to sit and let this thing really, do what it's going to do and process the whole thing. But at the same time, at a certain point, life is going to go on whether I'm ready for it to or not. And so we're just trying to be honest about what we're walking through too. And that's been kind of that's the hard thing. So every night when I'm doing a concert, I'm trying not to make it seem like everything's fine. I'll stand there every night and just go, hey, if I didn't have the hope of heaven, I'd be destroyed right now. And I'm pretty close to destruction already. But at least right now, I'm able to tell you that God is close to us. He is near to us. So if you brought your hurt in, let's hurt together, but also let's look towards the hope that we have in Jesus.
The hope that we have, we don't grieve like those who don't have any hope.
We have no hope, that's right.
Amen. I have to remember that all the time. I do understand my dad passed away December 19th, and so just before Christmas. Yeah. So I was at his house. I flew out to New Jersey to go to his house and to be with him when he passed, but just before he passed. But while I was there, the next few days, the Christmas gifts arrived that I had sent him. Right. So those are Christmas gifts I will never open. Yeah. Because I can't open them. Right. And I took the box and I packed it and sent it back home because those were my gifts to him, Right. But God gave me so many special moments ahead of time with him that was so beautiful and totally God moments that I can't even explain another way. The other thing was that because it was before Christmas, and maybe you felt this way, my son and I realized we're not going to be home for Christmas. So we had bought a Christmas tree. It was 10 feet tall. It was a real live one. It was the first live one I bought since my wife had passed away. And I thought, okay, I can get a real tree this year. I'm kind of healing up, Yeah. I'm stepping forward. And then I get the call that my father passes away. So I thought, let's just get rid of this tree. So we took the tree and hurled it over the balcony, off into the backyard, into the lawn, and said, forget it. We're not having Christmas. There's no way. But we hadn't decorated it yet. But then we put up a artificial tree when we got back home on the night of Christmas, and we celebrated that way. I just didn't want a Christmas tree up as a fire hazard while we were away.
Hot take.
Yeah. And who knew when we did that?
I'm an artificial tree fan.
Yeah.
Let me just say. If I don't have to worry about watering, I've got enough. I got children to feed. If I'm having to feed a plant and take care of it,
that's right.
Let's just not put the. Let's not make me the fire marshal.
Right.
Here.
But that just shows you the mix of emotions. Yes. The frustration, the hurt, the
weight. The weight. The holidays make things a little heavier anyway, and we had to walk into it 2 days later.
2 days later. Were you with your brother when he passed away?
I was.
What did you say to him?
Oh, goodness. That was, for us, it may have been 7.5 years. Yeah. So, and people tell me all the time, they're like, well, at least you had time to prepare. Can I tell you something? He beat cancer twice. I thought he was Superman. So him passing was not something I thought was was going to, we knew that it was there. But yeah, I actually got out of a tour halfway through and went home and got to spend precious time with him before. And we kind of thought to ourselves, he had been on a trajectory and kind of went down. He went up, went down. And then all of a sudden he started failing. And so we're like, let's get home. Let's be with him. So I canceled the tour and spent that time. And then all of a sudden it just fell off a cliff. So we had a whole day of, I basically got to be an audience to something supernatural. He got to tell everybody goodbye. So I was the one who walked into the room, brought in my aunts and uncles, and he talked to them. So for me, it was a lot of listening, which was precious to me. Right on. And things that I'm constantly still thinking about right now. But yeah, just that nearness and being able to have those moments, and a couple of moments that are just me and him that I won't talk to anybody else about because it was just like sacred for us to have that time. But like I said, knowing that yes, there was a breath that was taken and his life is over, but that there's this new life for him. It's all new. and he's not hurting. There's no cancer or anything else. So,
Thank you, brother.
yeah, hey, right?
I know. Well, we're talking with Micah Tyler today and hearing about his story
Yeah.
and about his precious brother Daniel. And Daniel is God is my leader.
That's right.
God is my judge. So that's a strong name.
Also,
man.
I love an artificial Christmas tree. that's the most important thing.
Well, I
I want to get out
learned to
there.
love it too.
That's right.
I tell you what, I learned to love it too. It's great, brother.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Well, 2025 is off and running, and you have a new song, God Did It.
Yeah.
So let's hear about that. I'm sure you're sharing it at your concerts.
I am, and the response has been so special so far.
Yeah.
And honestly, the Lord knows. We wrote this song a year ago. It's already been kind of rattling around in my chest because again, I'm writing it from like, God, what do you want me to say to people? What are you trying to show me? And I kept looking back on the times where God was so faithful over and over again, not only just putting the breath in my lungs and calling us his children, but like, man, I see daily circumstances where God just shows himself faithful. So I wanted to give myself and the rest of the church a chance to just pump our fists and say, we trust you, God. We want to give credit where credit is due. So the fact that we're walking through a really tough season right now, it could go either way. I could go like, God, but the thing is, he's already proven himself to me. So now I get to say, God, even when the circumstances don't feel like what I want them to feel like, I still know what you've done. So that's why I can trust you right now. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know who holds tomorrow. And I can't worry about it because today has its own set of things going on. So I'm just going to trust you in the worries of today. The Bible says in 1 Peter 5:7, cast your cares upon him because he cares for you. So I just keep going, God, I'm not going to let my circumstances change what the truth looks like. I'm going to trust the truth to affect my circumstances today. So God Did It is a chance for us to just kind of join arms and go,
Amen.
God, we know what you've done, and we're going to trust that you're still doing it today.
Amen. I say it like this. I'm going to pray the solution, not the problem.
Oh, come on.
That's
great.
where it's at.
Yeah,
I'm going to pray the solution, not the problem.
Because we know the one who can actually solve this
I really
thing.
do feel that it is true, that it's just simply, it's such a basic message, and we can just become just maybe not numb to it, but think, yeah, it's not exciting. But the love of God is what we need to share. It's the salt and light of the world. And it's being Jesus to people and just sharing with them God's love, like cast all your cares on him because he cares for you. This is still the message for our time.
Yes.
More than ever. And we can become just sort of going along thinking, well, yeah, people know that, but not everybody has experienced that yet. Well,
And it goes back to the Bible tells us very clearly, Jesus says, deny yourself, which means don't look at your circumstances. Deny the things that are around you. Take up your cross. Pick up this opportunity that God's called us to be faithful to him and carry it daily. It's a daily decision. I can't rely on what I said yesterday for today. Today I had to get up and go, okay, I am here to take up the cross. I'm here to deny myself, and I'm here to follow you with that thing. So really, like I said, the song God Did It for me really has just been this daily anthem to go, God, okay, it's not about my circumstances today. It's about who you are, who you've been, and who I know you are going to be. And so I'm going to take up the cross and trust you and run alongside of you or behind you. You have to carry me some days, but either way, I'm going to deny myself and take this road with you.
if you're on your own weekend or your own time and you want to put on any album you want to listen to,
goodness.
what do you put on and what's Micah Tyler listening to? You know, I've been going to the gym a little bit lately, doing some workout.
Yeah.
And the guy told me, who I train with, he says, hey, we're going to get the studio today. He goes, so now you can play all the songs you want to play. And I get to learn about other people's music, what they like to listen to. What are you listening to if you pick one album on a winter weekend, you're not performing and you're just on your own, you can listen to whatever you want.
When I'm not streaming KTIS.
Yeah.
What
are you listening to?
For me, okay, there's a couple of things. Again, time capsules. I love being able to go back in time. They're the Psalms record that Shane and Shane put out. I was a 19-year-old youth pastor, still scared to death, trying to figure out, I wasn't old enough to drive the church van for another 5 years. So I was just like this kid trying to figure out how this whole thing goes. Could not check into the hotel room that I was staying at the conference. Had to have another youth pastor check me in because I was so young, right?
Yeah.
So we get there, and Shane and Shane were leading worship. It was like Shane and Shane. They couldn't have come up with a better name. Walked in there and heard these guys and was just
powerful.
Oh my gosh, I was overwhelmed, which is the reason why I went and bought a guitar. I thought, I got to have someone lead me in worship the way that I felt like I was just led in worship by these guys. The kids didn't do it, so man, I can't tell you how many strings I broke listening to that Psalms record and trying to replicate what these guys are doing. But that is a teleportation. I can just go back to 2002 immediately and just completely overwhelmed with that. So the fact that my first tour that I ever went on was a Christmas tour with Shane and Phil Wickham, was just the Lord's absolute kindness, just like really showing off how He's got this whole thing planned out. It was amazing. But that's a record that I can go back to, and like I said, it's time travel for me.
So great. What does this summer look like for you?
You know what? So we're on Winter Jam right now, and we are hard and heavy. We're doing like 38 shows. It's been amazing so far. The artist we're out with is just incredible. But the plan is we're going to go hard on this. The plan is hopefully to release an album this summer, which I'm very excited. I haven't released an album since 22. Very excited about the songs that we have. Really, God did us the first thing we've put out. So at some point, put out a new record. But also, I'm going to Alaska with Mercy Me, like everyone does. I'm doing Mercy Me at Sea, which is going to be a
nice.
We have like a couple of weird just events that we're doing, but really we're trying to keep it light. My son's coming back home from college, so we're trying to like go full-blown family mode, as well as release an album and go do these trips and that kind of thing. So I'm excited for whatever it looks like, but the break is what I'm the most excited about. Is just literally sitting, being, and making memories and hanging out with my kiddos.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and a little working vacation too.
Every once in a while.
That's
Get up there and play a few songs in Alaska.
That's good, man. That's hard. That's fun. Are you a fisherman? And if so, do you have a great fishing story or a memory, or no?
So I am a fisherman.
What's your best fishing story?
This is great. So my grandpa, who's gone to be with the Lord about 10 years ago, was my hero, my pops. He's the best storyteller I ever knew. We could sit, so we would spend hours out there on his little pond, sitting out there and fishing together. When I was 12 years old, caught a 5-pound bass in this pond that he didn't know had fish in it. Like, it was crazy. So, but my favorite memory is whenever my son Noah was born. He was 2 years old, had little frog rubber boots. We went out there, and he hasn't caught fish in this pond in years. And I just said, "Hey, Pops, can we go fish a little bit?" So he's out there, and I remember I literally, and this is one of those, I know this is one of those weird things. I just asked the Lord, I said, "God, can we just catch a fish where I can have this memory where I'll remember it forever?" And all of a sudden, and I told Noah, I said, "Grab it." It almost pulls him in. I'm going to hold on to him. We pull it in there, we pull it up, and there's this 5.5-pound bass that, again, we did not know there were fish in this pond still, and this giant fish is right there. And I remember just a tear rolling down my face, hugging my grandpa. He was so proud of my son. So again, that is a memory that I will hold on to for as long as I can remember.
Maybe it was the same fish.
You know what? No, the first one, actually, here's the problem. The first one we cooked.
Okay.
so unless there's reincarnation, which I don't believe in, it may have happened.
I figured you put on a 1/2 pound over the years, 5.5 pounds.
That's right,
It's the same one. Largemouth or smallmouth?
Largemouth.
Did he break water or what? No.
No, we didn't know what it was until all of a sudden, when we start pulling up, you see his back kind of crest just for a second and go, okay, either this is a monster or we've got a monster. And so luckily it was the latter. So we pulled it up, and it was awesome.
He's a lunker.
That's right.
Micah Tyler, thank you. It's a pleasure, man. Appreciate you so much.
Thanks for what you do, man. Appreciate it. Again, thanks for telling me not to wear mascara for this interview.
Thank you. Yeah, man, you don't need it. You look great.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I Love That Song is a Wow God production, a ministry of the University of Northwestern St. Paul. Discover more at wowgod.com.
I love that song.
I love that song.
I love that song.